Hi everyone, welcome back to Java 1 for All. In this video we are going to talk about constructors. Well, constructors is what the name says. It's going to construct something. So far we have been working with objects. So constructors is a way that Java has to create objects. Even though you're not explicitly using constructor, behind the scenes the compilers make sure that you do have one. So before we move on, let's create here a new package because it's a new topic. And this will be on Java core, right click, then package, D, constructor, and then right click, package name, domain. I will use the same class, so I will just copy this anime and I will Control C and then Control V here. Same thing, because we are going to use this. And let's create the test as well. So just right click here, new test, remove domain and add test, and I will copy anime test 01. So make sure that just copy this one, Control C, select here, Control V. Okay, so the first thing you have to be careful is that this anime, if you hold Control and press B as beta, you are going to the anime, and be careful, look at the package. So this anime test should be working with the anime inside the D constructor. So make sure that you delete here on anime test this import, and you press Alt Enter and you import correctly from the D constructor package. Okay, so let's talk about constructor. Constructor is kind of a way that Java has to create objects, to initialize the objects as well. So far, you have been using parentheses to represent methods, but do you realize that we have here, when we are adding new anime or new student or any new object, that we have parentheses, but this is not a method. This represents the constructor. So let's go back to the anime. Constructor has the following rule, syntax. First is the access modifier. We could create public or private, but let's start with public. And then, usually, if you're writing methods, the second part is the return type, either void or the object that you would like to return the type, for example, string, integer, and so on. But with constructor, you should not have anything. And instead, you have the name of the class, exactly like you have here. So if you want to copy and paste here to make sure that you are writing the same thing, just do it. Followed by parentheses and then curly braces. So this is a constructor. The difference between a constructor and a method is that constructor has nothing as return. So not even void. You have to be careful, because when I say nothing, and sometimes I say that we are not going to return anything, if you're talking about method, is void, but constructor don't have absolutely anything written in between the access modifier and the name of the class. Okay, so now let me close all the tabs here and open again. So now that we have this constructor, if we do execute our code, Ctrl Shift F10, we will see exactly the same result. Because even though if we remove this and you execute again, I want to show you something. Same results, even though you don't have the constructor here, but the compiler is adding one for you. So if you do not write a constructor, the compiler will add a constructor for you. And the constructor it will add is a constructor with no parameters. So basically, if we go to Alt and then Java core, so this is where the .class, the bytecode are located, constructor domain, you will see that we have here a constructor, even though we don't have in our class. And all the classes, they have constructors. So anime test, anime here, and if you go to introduction to methods calculator, all of them, they will have constructors. Even if you didn't write any, the compiler will make sure that one is available for you. Okay, so what's the use of constructor? Constructors, let's go back here to what we have. Public anime. So since I'm adding here, the compiler will not add one, so don't worry, we are not going to have duplicated constructor. If I execute this code, and I go back to alt, Java core, the constructor domain anime, is the same thing. It's not going to add another one over the one I already have. And the advantage is, first, it's executed before anything. So we are going to talk about initialization order later, but so far it's good for us to know that it's executed before any method. So for example, inside constructor, and if I execute again Shift F10, you will see that's even before the init or the print. So if I add here inside init, you will see that is still after the constructor. Basically, we are constructing the object, but there is a problem, for example, with init. If we would like to have a rule, for example, I don't want objects that anime objects to exist without a name. So we would like to enforce that the name is there. Well, basically, there is no way for us today because, well, there is a constructor that allows us to create the object empty. But if we put here a parameter saying I want the name, and now this dot name equals the name, I'm saying I cannot create an object that is anime without a name. And I can see here that we have a compilation error because it needs a name. So we just have to pass any name, IQ, and if we execute again, you will see Akudama drive because we are adding after. So you can just press Ctrl/ and execute again. And you will see now that we have the object, at least with the name. So every time I create a new object, I can pass any name here, any actually string, because even if I pass empty, I will have it here. So validations we are going to learn later. So basically now we are enforcing that whoever tries to create an anime will have to pass a string representing the name. So it's kind of a rule that we can have for our object. Now, if we look at this code, the constructor, the init is basically acting as a constructor. So I think we can do the same. I will just get this big one. I will copy these parameters and I will replace here. And now that we have the initialization here, let's just do the same. I will copy the rest, type episodes and status, and then the status. Okay, so now I'm saying every time the object anime is created, I will need name, type, episodes, and status, or at least I will need a string, integer, and string. And I can remove both initialization methods. But now I have to come here to my anime test, and I will need to send the rest. So I will copy here, and if you're lost, you can rely on IntelliJ to tell you the parameters that you are sending. And now I will execute again, Ctrl+Shift+F10. And as you can see, we have the same results. And if we go back to .class, if we right click and then go on Open in Explorer, you will see that we do have anime.class. So this is the bytecode. And if you open, now take a look. The constructor is the one we wrote. We don't have that constructor with no parameters, no arguments anymore. Well, but that's going to bring a problem. It means that every time that we want to create an anime, we need to send all this data, but sometimes maybe we don't have the data at hand. So there is another option that we can have here to allow people to still create animes without any parameter. So for example, if I try to create here another anime, it's not going to work because I need to send this data. Now going back, we can rely on the same thing we did for methods, overloading. So basically, public anime. And what's the overloading rule? The name should be the same. In this case, the anime, the name of the class, followed by parentheses. So we have to follow the same rule. The arguments, the parameters, they need to be either different in amount, the quantity, or the types. In this case, since we don't have any parameters, one of the rules it's fulfilled. And I have two options now to create this object, either sending all the data or sending no data at all. And here you can see that it works. But of course, if we try to print the data, you will get null and zeros, basically like this. Okay, I think that's enough information for one video. What you have to remember is that constructors, we have a couple rules. First, if you don't write anything, the compiler will add one like this with no arguments for you. And if you add, it will not add any. So you will never have duplicated constructors because the compiler is adding one for you. And then if you have only one constructor with parameters, you need, it's mandatory to send these parameters at the time you are creating the object. Okay, I think that's enough information, so let's continue the next video. Bye.